Hi, I'm Rowan. I used to think the worst thing my family ever did was cut me out of the will. But that wasn't it. It was the way they smiled through it, during brunches, at church, behind courtroom doors, like I never existed. Like I was some distant helper, not their blood. They said I wasn't their son. But whose name paid the mortgage? Whose hands rebuilt the house they claimed? And whose heart kept showing up, even after every door quietly shut? You ever wonder what it takes for a man to erase his last name? Yeah. I found out. I was standing near the mimosa station when the projector clicked to black. Just a second ago, the final image had been a baby, Lucan, cradled between Malric and Alba, perfectly framed, perfectly lit. The room clapped. I didn't. I quietly slipped past the crowd, out the side gate of Lucan's backyard. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. Ember's crayon drawing was tucked safely in my back pocket, a little curl at the corner now that I'd held it too long. It was the only thing that made me feel like I still belonged somewhere. The next Sunday was clear and warm. Church in Plano always had that heavy silence, the kind that didn't comfort. It crushed. I sat at the far end of the pew. They took the center seats, the good ones. The pastor spoke about grace, about forgiveness. He looked right at me when he said it, like I was the one being asked to extend grace, not the one scraping to feel human. When communion came, families rose by row. Lucan walked ahead confidently, Alba right behind him. Malric paused at the edge of the pew, looked down the row, and made eye contact with me. His lips barely moved. Don't. That's all he said. I froze. Not because I feared the moment, but because I think I still wanted him to pull me into it. But he turned, walked away like I was a stranger. I stayed seated. A young woman in the row behind me leaned over and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. That nod we give when the real answer is too messy to unpack. That evening, Lucan hosted another brunch. This time it was smaller, more legacy circle, as he called it. I didn't want to go, but Ember had begged me. When I arrived, the tone had shifted. Less social, more strategic. Real estate investors, foundation board members, church deacons. Everyone was introduced as part of the future of the Dreyer name. I stood near the hedge, sipping water, when Alba approached. "We're glad you came," she said. No smile, just the words. I didn't answer. A few moments later, Lucan tapped his glass. "Can I have your attention?" He launched into a speech about bloodlines, legacy, and, of course, family honor. "Some of us were born for this," he said, looking right at me. "Others, well, families come in all forms. We all make our choices." I didn't blink. Alba added, soft but sharp. "We raised 2 sons, one from our blood, one from our hearts, but the heart sometimes changes." Someone laughed politely. I turned and left before dessert. Ember chased me to the gate. "Will you come for my birthday?" I crouched beside her, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As I drove home that night, I didn't listen to music. I didn't answer my phone. I just thought about communion, about a father who told me not to walk forward as if I were unclean. So they're not just cutting me out of pictures. They're cutting me out of spirit, of space, of sacred rituals. And yet, Ember still believed I belonged. But the real betrayal hadn't even begun yet. That came the following Sunday, under the roof of God. That card burned a hole in my chest for days. Ember had slipped it into my pocket when no one was watching. Crayon letters, slightly uneven. "You're my family. Don't go away." I kept it next to my keys. Every time I touched it, something inside me cracked a little more. But I hadn't broken yet. The following Sunday, I woke up early. Too early. I didn't need an alarm. My mind was louder. Then anything on the clock. Ember had asked if I'd come to church with her. She said she wanted me there for her little choir solo. So I went. The sanctuary smelled like old wood and carpet cleaner. The stained glass windows caught the morning sun just enough to make everything feel a little too bright. Lucan, Alba, and Malric were already seated. Front pew, of course. Ember waved when she spotted me, her little white dress fluttering as she turned. I slid into the very last row. The sermon was about legacy, about what we pass down and the blood that binds. The pastor wasn't subtle, and neither was the way Malric nodded along. Then came communion. The pastor said, "Family rows first, please." Alba rose. Lucan adjusted his cufflinks. Ember stood but hesitated, turning back to look at me. Malric placed a hand on her shoulder and guided her forward. As he passed my row, he paused just long enough to say, low and sharp, "He knows he's not blood." He didn't look at me after that. I didn't move. Not because I couldn't, but because I refused to give them the satisfaction of making a scene. I sat with my back straight, hands folded, eyes on the back of Lucan's head. Ember looked over her shoulder once, confused, almost hurt. After service, I didn't stick around. I waited outside by the car while Ember finished her lemonade and cookies inside with the kids. On the ride back, she was quiet. Then, gently, she pulled something out of her Sunday school tote. A tiny wooden cross, painted yellow, with sparkles glued along the edges. "I made this for you," she said, "so you don't feel left out." I couldn't speak. I just nodded and slipped it into my jacket pocket, right beside her crayon note. Lucan's SUV drove past us as we walked the sidewalk home. He honked once, rolled down the window. "Need a ride, stranger?" I didn't answer. He laughed and sped off. Later that evening, the Dryers hosted a small BBQ in the backyard. I showed up, only because Ember begged me to come. The sun had just started to set. The yard was lit with fairy lights, and folding chairs were arranged in semicircles. Someone had a guitar. The smell of ribs and baked beans hung in the air. It was the kind of night that would have felt like home once. Malric stood to give a toast. His voice was clear, deliberate. "Lucan," he said, "was born for this family. He's our anchor, our heir." Polite clapping followed. Alba added, almost tenderly, "We were blessed with 2 sons, one by birth, one by grace." A few people looked at me then. I didn't blink. Lucan raised his beer. "To bloodlines." They all drank. I didn't. I was done pretending this was anything but what it was. A slow erasure, executed with smiles and wine glasses. After the meal, while the kids ran around with glow sticks, and the adults discussed mortgage rates and college plans, Ember tugged on my sleeve. She reached into her dress pocket and pulled out another folded paper. A card. This one had stars drawn around the edges. Inside, in purple marker, "You're my family, don't go away." I didn't cry. Not there. But I knew then, with final clarity, that they had declared blood. And I was going to show them legacy. That card Ember gave me sat on my nightstand all week, right next to my keys and a half-used bottle of melatonin I hadn't touched in months. I didn't need sleep aids anymore. Not when my own family could exhaust me better than any pill. Monday morning rolled in quiet, just the way I needed it. The city hadn't quite shaken off its weekend yet, and neither had I. I called in sick. No explanations, no guilt. I just needed the day to feel like mine. The apartment was still, the only sound coming from the old ceiling fan that creaked every few seconds. I made coffee, strong and bitter, and sat at the kitchen table staring at a manila folder I hadn't opened in 5 years. Inside was the original mortgage contract for the Plano house. The one Lucan liked to call Dad's legacy property. Only my name was on it. I traced my finger over the signature. Rowan Vexley, the only owner of record. The title had been temporarily reassigned on paper to Malric for tax reasons. I remembered those words clear as day. Just temporary, son. We'll move it back next fiscal year. That fiscal year never came. The bitterness started low in my chest. Not anger? Not yet. Just that quiet nausea of realizing you've been played. I dug out my old laptop from the hall closet. The thing barely powered on. It whirred and groaned like a car engine in winter, but eventually booted. I searched through an archive folder titled Mortgage Docs, clicking file after file until one email froze me. It was from Malric, dated 7 years ago, sent to our then family attorney. We'll tell the bank he co-signed, but this property stays in bloodline hands. I read it twice, 3 times. My eyes stung, not from tears, but from the kind of fury that forces your body to sit absolutely still. They used me, not just emotionally, financially. I was the paperweight that held up their empire. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling fan, which now seemed slower than before. I thought about that winter, me scraping together savings to cover the down payment, working overtime to fix leaky pipes, to install new drywall. Lucan had shown up once with a bottle of wine and took a selfie in front of the house like he had just closed the deal himself. And when Dad had his health scare later that year, it was me who took off work, made soup, filled his prescriptions. Lucan? He posted about investing in bloodline assets on social media. I called Anselm. He picked up after the 3rd ring. "Rowan," he said, "didn't expect to hear from you before noon. Do you still handle property law?" There was a pause, then the rustling of papers. "I've still got a few teeth left in me. What's going on?" "I need to meet," I said. "Today, if you can." "You buying or fighting?" "Maybe both." We agreed on a coffee shop halfway between our places. Before I left, I slid the deed into a plastic sleeve, placed it in my backpack with the laptop, and took one last look at Ember's card. That single question from her, "Don't go away," had woken something in me. Not vengeance, exactly. Something deeper. If I wasn't family, why the hell was I holding the deed to the only house they hadn't paid for themselves? I didn't know how it would all play out. But I knew one thing. They'd erased me from their photos, from their pews, from their speeches. But they forgot one place I still existed, inked in black and white, notarized, signed. By midweek, I had mostly stopped expecting anything from my family, until I got a text from Alba. It popped up just after 9 a.m. Wednesday morning. "Let's talk. Just us. Corner cafe off Main, noon." No emojis, no punctuation, just straight, surgical language. I stared at it for a full minute. Part of me hoped this was her trying to bridge something. Maybe even apologize. Maybe. The corner cafe was quiet at that time of day. A few retirees camped out with crossword puzzles and bottomless coffee refills. I arrived 10 minutes early. She was already there. Poised as always. Lipstick just right. Cardigan color coordinated with her purse. She didn't look up from her phone when I sat down. "Rowan." Her voice was crisp, neutral. "Thanks for making time." I nodded, waited. She didn't ask about my job or my health. Just leaned back, folded her hands, and said, "I've always admired your focus." Then she pulled an envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. I looked at it, but didn't touch it. 50,000, she said. "Cashier's checks, clean, no paper trail?" I blinked slowly. "This isn't hush money," she added quickly. "It's a gesture, to help you move forward. We don't want this to get ugly." "We?" She flinched, barely, but enough. "Rowan, come on," she said. "You know this family's been through a lot. 2 sons, 2 different paths. You've always marched to your own beat. I picked up the envelope. Thick, heavy in a way that made my palms sweat. You think I care about your money? Alba's expression didn't change. I think you care about peace, about keeping things dignified. I leaned forward. Did you ever think of me as your son? Her eyes darted. She took a breath. Too long, too measured. We did our best, she said. I pushed the envelope back across the table. She didn't reach for it. I stood. Thanks for the coffee. She didn't stop me. By the time I got back on I-35 toward Austin, the calls started. First my Uncle Greg, 2 missed calls, then Cousin Lacey, then my childhood neighbor, Mrs. Underwood. Voicemails stacked up one after the other. Rowan, don't embarrass your parents. Lucan's stepping up. Let him have this. Be gracious. Thanksgiving's coming. Don't ruin it. Even the family group chat, which had been silent for weeks, suddenly lit up, with everyone except me. I checked the member list. I was gone. I scrolled up just to confirm. My last message was a birthday gif for Lucan. No one had reacted. Back in Austin, I pulled into my driveway just after sundown. The kitchen smelled stale. I flipped on the lights, dropped my bag on the table, and opened the envelope. 10 crisp checks. $5,000 each. I laid them flat on the counter, next to a stack of unpaid utility bills and an empty coffee mug. Then I slid them into a drawer. Not out of sight, not forgiven. Just paused. If my silence was worth $50,000, I wondered how much the truth would cost them. That night, I didn't sleep, because by dawn, I knew exactly who could help me put a price on legacy. The office door shut behind me with a soft click. Anselm didn't look up right away. He was reviewing something on a thick manila folder. His desk was cluttered with legal pads, half-sipped coffee, and reading glasses that slid down the bridge of his nose. I placed the deed, the bank transfer logs, and the printed email from Malrick onto his desk without a word. Anselm finally glanced up, squinted, and said, "You don't need to yell. You already won on paper. Now let's make it real." I sat down. My hands were cold, even though it was warm outside. The next 2 days passed like I was living someone else's life. I went to work. I answered emails. I attended 2 planning committee calls like everything was normal. But beneath the surface, I was stacking ammunition. Anselm drafted the lawsuit with surgical precision. Breach of fiduciary trust, fraudulent conveyance, bad faith reassignment of title. I learned legal terms faster than I ever learned calculus. I didn't tell Ember. I didn't tell anyone. Some things were best done without a crowd. By Friday morning, I drove back up to Plano. I didn't visit the house. Instead, I went straight to the regional branch of Texas First Bank. The manager was younger than me, probably a year out of business school. His smile faded as I placed my ID and property account number on the counter. "I need copies of all loan documents and transactions on this property, original and amended," I said. He tapped at his keyboard, squinted at the screen, then cleared his throat. "Looks like those records were consolidated last quarter. We don't have them in branch anymore." I tilted my head. "Consolidated?" "Transferred to Central Archives. Not locally accessible." He tried to smile again, but I was already watching the name on his screen. Lucan Dreyer, authorized proxy. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just collected my things and walked out. Back in Austin, I went to my safe. Inside were digital and physical copies, notarized, time-stamped, signed. I had kept them out of stubbornness, or maybe something deeper I hadn't named until now. Instinct. I printed a fresh copy and drove to Anselm's office just before closing. He raised an eyebrow when I handed it to him. "No email?" he asked. "No," I said, "because erasing me won't be that easy." That night, we filed the lawsuit. Property dispute and breach of trust. Anselm hit submit with a strange calm in his eyes, like a surgeon completing the first incision. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Sunday morning, before the sun was fully up, I made the short drive over to Lucan's house. I didn't knock. I just walked up to the gate and left the envelope between the slats. Inside it was a single sheet of paper. Notice of property dispute and intent to litigate. My signature at the bottom. Deliberate, dark ink, no hesitation. He wanted to play games with bloodlines. I was going to show him what happened when the paper didn't forget. It started with a ping. Early Sunday morning, coffee half poured, eyes not even fully open. I checked my email like I always did, habit more than purpose. But this wasn't the usual newsletter or construction update. Subject line: Your father's statement is going viral. I tapped the link. The video wasn't long, maybe 15 seconds. Malrich's voice, clear and cold. He's not one of us. He never was. It had been recorded at Lucan's brunch. Same lighting, same smug tone. Except someone had cut out the surrounding laughter, the context, the smirking glances, everything except that one sentence, floating like a knife. Below the video, a banner ran: Dreyer family disowns son amid lawsuit drama. By noon, my name was trending. Not for a good reason. Comments flooded in. Reddit threads dissected my tax filings, my speech patterns, my LinkedIn history. Facebook groups picked apart my college years. A few folks asked genuinely, "Isn't this the guy who used to volunteer at the river cleanup?" Others posted photos of Lucan shaking hands at real estate events. By 2 p.m., a public grant I had applied for was flagged under internal review. The sponsor emailed me directly. Given current media sensitivity, we're pausing all endorsements related to your application. I didn't even bother replying. But then came the second blow. An audio clip surfaced, a rough, grainy recording of my voice saying, "I should have never trusted them. They're a sham of a family." It was my voice. I remembered the night, years ago, recorded during a drunken venting session with someone I thought was a friend. It had been spliced, the context removed. Lucan had held on to it, for years. He'd saved that moment like a trap, waiting for the perfect time to spring it. I tried to post a response. A short paragraph on my personal Facebook page. Calm, restrained, factual. But trolls pounced instantly. He's just bitter he's not the real son. People like him always cry foul when they don't get the money. One of my cousins, someone who hadn't spoken to me since Ember's baptism, posted a meme. When the side character thinks he's the lead. Family members shared Lucan's video with heart emojis. I was removed from every family group chat, even the one about Grandma Ruth's garden club. My inbox turned sour. Messages came in from church folks, community people, strangers I didn't know. Some were passive-aggressive, praying for you to find peace. Others were blunt. You're tearing your parents apart. Shame on you. I didn't move from the couch all day. The TV was off. The blinds were drawn. Evening slid into night. My phone sat silent for hours, face down. Then it lit up. A single name. Ember Dreyer. My hands went cold. I hesitated, then answered. Her voice came through soft. "Uncle Rowan, are they lying?" That one question snapped me upright, because in that moment I remembered something they hadn't erased. She still believed in me. Monday afternoon was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that feels borrowed, like the world paused just long enough for me to notice. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the lawsuit still open on my laptop, when there was a knock at the door. Not hurried, not tentative, deliberate. I opened it to find a woman standing there, small in frame, her gray hair pulled back neatly into a low bun. She held a worn leather purse and a white envelope that looked like it had been handled 100 times. "Rowan Vexley?" "Yes." "I'm Clara Roseth. I used to work at Medical Hill Hospital. I was on shift the day you were born. My body went still. I saw your name online. I've seen what they're saying. I think it's time you knew. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, set her bag down on the table, and sat like someone who had spent decades standing for others. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. I was reassigned the week after you were born, she said, her voice low but steady. No explanation, just a transfer. But before they moved me, I took copies. Inside were 2 documents. One was a certified birth certificate. My name, my birth date, the hospital seal. And under parents, Malric Dreyer and Alba Dreyer. No adoptive stamp. No guardianship note. The second was a sealed hospital log from 1989. Patient files showing the delivery records. Time, staff, details. It was all there. I stared at the pages, throat tightening. They told me I was adopted. Clara nodded slowly. I asked questions back then. Too many, apparently. They didn't want anyone looking too closely. I pressed my palms flat on the table, trying to ground myself. I'm their biological son, I said aloud, more to the room than to her. She reached into her purse again. There's more. Out came a small flash drive. I kept a few things from over the years, just in case. I plugged it into my laptop and clicked on the only file. A video. Grainy footage from an old camcorder. Me, maybe 27, lifting Malric into a lawn chair during a backyard cookout. He had just come home from the hospital after a minor stroke. I could hear his voice, faint but appreciative. Lucan wasn't in the video, not even in the background. I remember that day, I whispered. Lucan was in Miami. He posted a photo of himself on a yacht. The video kept playing. I adjusted Malric's blanket, brought him a drink. Clara had filmed it from the side window, apparently unnoticed. I hit pause and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in months, I didn't feel crazy. I didn't feel alone. I felt anchored. I looked over at Clara, who sat silently, watching me the way people watch someone step into truth. Why now? I asked. Because they're using lies in public. It's time the truth had its turn. I thanked her. She stood, gave me a soft squeeze on the shoulder, and left without another word. The next morning, I met Anselm at his office. I laid the birth certificate, the hospital log, and the flash drive on his desk. He flipped through them slowly, his expression unreadable. They lied about my blood, I said, voice steady. I won't lie about the truth. Anselm gave a slow nod. Then we hit back, on record. The courthouse smelled like old wood and old money. I'd been there once before for a parking ticket appeal. This time was different. The courtroom was packed. Local reporters in the back row, a few family acquaintances I hadn't seen in years, and of course the Dreyer clan, sitting front and center like it was their church pew. Lucan in a tailored blazer, Alba with her lips tight and eyes vacant, and Malric, unreadable. Anselm walked beside me, calm as ever, carrying a worn leather briefcase that held everything. Clara followed, a soft dignity about her, envelope clutched tight. The bailiff called order. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Honora Price, took her seat and adjusted her glasses. We began. First on the docket was the will. Their attorney stood, cleared his throat like he was about to narrate a graduation ceremony. To Lucan Dreyer, he read, sole heir to the estate and holdings of the Dreyer Family Trust. A ripple of gasps echoed. Some mouths actually dropped. I didn't move. The silence that followed was thicker than the Texas heat. Then Anselm rose. Your Honor, we request permission to submit a set of documents pertaining to paternity, property, and fiduciary misrepresentation. The judge nodded. Proceed. One by one, He laid out the originals, the deed to the Plano property with my signature, the scanned loan records, the notarized hospital logs. And then, the birth certificate, Malric and Alba Dreyer, listed as parents. No amendment, no adoption notation. Clara took the stand next. Her voice didn't waver. She recounted what happened in 1989, the sudden transfer, the silencing, the records she kept, not for revenge, but for conscience. And then the video played. The room was still as the grainy footage filled the screen. Me, younger, lifting Malric after his stroke, adjusting a pillow under his shoulder, offering him water. You could hear his frail voice say, "You always show up, son." Lucan was nowhere in sight. The screen went black. The judge leaned forward. "I am upholding the plaintiff's claim to the Plano property. It is, and has legally remained, under Mr. Vexley's ownership since its purchase. Furthermore, I am opening an investigation into the Dreyer Family Trust. Evidence of deliberate misrepresentation is substantial." Lucan stood so fast his chair slammed into the bench behind him. He muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Malric didn't say a word. He stared straight ahead, hands clenched on the table. Alba fumbled with her purse, eyes avoiding mine. I didn't gloat, I didn't smirk. I walked out with the same quiet fury I'd walked in with. Except now I had my name back. Not just legally, emotionally. Outside, reporters waited like vultures. I didn't stop for them. I just slipped my hand into my jacket pocket and felt Ember's folded drawing still there. They tried to erase me. Now they get to watch me be written back in bold. But claiming truth comes at a cost. And they still had one last move left in them. The news outlets called it a moral victory. But sitting in my apartment days later, staring at a blank TV screen, I felt no triumph. Headlines flashed across feeds, illegitimate son rightfully heir, while my phone buzzed with reporters wanting a comment. I gave none. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been proven. The house was mine again. I'd gone back once, just to walk through it. The door creaked like it remembered me. Dust gathered along the windowsills where Mom used to line up sun catchers. The dining table was gone, the air too still. I stood in the living room, where I once patched a leaky ceiling no one thanked me for. Silence welcomed me home more kindly than they ever had. Lucan, unsurprisingly, didn't take it well. A formal notice arrived, his attorney demanding shared access to heirlooms stored in the attic. Anselm handled the response. "Only blood has legal claim, remember?" It was brutal, and exactly right. But that wasn't all. I learned, through an investigative reporter who sniffed out filings from years ago, that my wire transfer, the one that saved Dad's credit after his real estate flop, had funded Lucan's entire startup. Dreyer Holdings. The brochures claimed it was a multi-generational legacy built on trust and tradition. My name wasn't even on the loan documents, just the balance sheet. And just like that, I realized he'd taken my money and built a monument to himself with it. That was the real theft, not the house, not the title. The legacy I never got to shape because I was busy patching their holes. I was trying to shake it off when my phone buzzed. Ember, a selfie. Her eyes squinting in the sun, a messy crayon drawing in hand. "I made this for you today," the message read. I called instantly. It rang once, then voicemail. I tried again. No answer. I opened our old messages. Her contact photo was gone. The chat still showed her message, but read. Just that. My chest tightened. "I called the Dreyer house. I shouldn't have." Alba picked up. "Hello?" she said flatly. "It's Rowan. I wanted to talk to Ember, please." There was a pause, then a sigh that sounded rehearsed. "Let her move on," she said. "You've hurt this family enough." Click. No yelling, no slamming of phones, just a manufactured kindness that cut deeper than hate ever could. That night, I drove by Ember's school. I didn't get out. I just parked across the street, watched as she stepped onto the sidewalk with her backpack sliding off one shoulder. She laughed at something a friend said. She didn't see me. Back at the house, my house, I packed a small brown paper bag. Inside, her favorite juice box, and a note folded into a heart. I drove it over in silence, parked half a block away, walked the rest with my hoodie pulled low. The mailbox creaked. I slipped the bag inside and stood there for a beat too long, staring at the porch light that once guided me home. They can take legacy, I whispered, but they can't erase what she remembers. Even memories have their limits, and I was about to find out which ones still mattered. The courthouse was nearly empty this time. No cameras, no press, just a final procedural review in a quiet side room, the kind where decisions are recorded but rarely remembered. I didn't expect anything more than a signature, a file, maybe a nod from the clerk, but whispers moved through the small space like wind under a door. I turned around. There she was. Ember. Her school counselor stood beside her, a firm but gentle presence. Ember clutched something in her hand, folded like a secret. The judge paused the process as Ember stepped forward. She didn't look at Malric or Alba. She didn't glance at Lucan. She looked straight at me. Then she turned to the bench, reached up, and handed over the folded paper. The judge opened it slowly. Inside was a drawing. Crayon-colored, uneven lines. 3 figures. A tall one with glasses, a smaller one in pigtails, and between them a house. Over it, in messy block letters, my family, Uncle Rowan, me, and the truth. No one breathed. The judge blinked. "Is this yours?" she asked gently. Ember nodded. "He didn't leave. He was pushed." That was all she said. Then she stepped back, returned to her counselor, and sat down. The silence felt sacred. Not because it was quiet, but because it was finally honest. After the hearing, I found a handwritten envelope tucked beneath my windshield wiper. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a letter. Short, penned in careful handwriting. It was from Marcus, my cousin. Barely a blip in this whole saga, but always there at family events, always watching. "I knew," he wrote. "I just didn't want to lose my place. I told myself it wasn't my fight, but when I saw Ember speak, I couldn't be quiet anymore. I'm sorry." That was it. No request for forgiveness, just confession. And somehow that made it feel more real. Later that afternoon, I walked Ember to her counselor's car. She stopped before getting in, looked up at me. "Even if they say you're not," she said, "I'll always know you're my uncle." I pulled a small box from my coat pocket. Inside was a keychain, a tiny phoenix, wings outstretched. She smiled wide, like I'd handed her a gold medal. When the car pulled away, I stood there longer than I needed to. That evening, I went home. The house was still mine. The silence was different now, not hollow, but steady. I took Ember's drawing from my satchel and placed it into a simple black frame. Hung it in the kitchen, above the spot where I usually left my keys. Then I walked into the next room, where a large cardboard box waited. Across the top, in bold black marker, "Name change, final docs." I didn't open it right away. I just stared, because I didn't need their name anymore. But I needed to make sure mine meant something. The folding chairs were lined up in uneven rows, each one with a paper program folded neatly on the seat. No red carpet, no spotlight. Just a modest community center in East Austin, the kind that smelled faintly of plywood and old gym mats. This wasn't a court ruling or a press frenzy. It was something quieter, something that mattered more to me. Phoenix House Foundation. The name was stitched into the banner behind the podium, flanked by 2 modest potted plants and 1 tired balloon bouquet from the corner store. The mission was clear: to support children displaced by family breakups and offer mentorship for estranged heirs trying to find legal footing, or emotional grounding, whichever came first. Anselm stood beside me, straightening his tie, even though no one here cared if it was crooked. A few reporters from local outlets milled in the back. Volunteers chatted by the snack table. Then I saw it. The chair. Front row. Slightly off-center. A folding metal seat with a note taped to the back. Reserved for Malric Dreyer, if he ever decides to show up as a father. Some people noticed. A few whispered. Most just looked away. I didn't wait long before stepping up to the podium. "This isn't about revenge," I began. "It's about remembering who I was before I believed I had to earn their love." The room quieted. "I don't expect apologies, and I'm not here to make accusations. This is for the kids who wonder if silence is their inheritance, for the ones trying to build names out of fragments." My voice trembled once, caught itself, then steadied. I thanked Anselm. I thanked Clara. And I thanked Ember, not by name, but by calling her the little light in the hallway that kept flickering no matter how dark the room got. I stepped down. The audience clapped, soft but honest. People started to leave. Some came to shake my hand. In the back, I saw a man. Gray coat, standing with his hands in his pockets, watching. He stepped forward, then stopped. Then he turned and walked out. I didn't follow. I sat beside the empty chair, placed a folded version of Ember's drawing on the seat, then just sat there. A few more people drifted out. Someone turned off the lights. Back home, the cardboard box still waited. I opened it. Inside, the official name change confirmation. My new legal identity, free from the Dreyer name. I signed at the bottom. Slowly, carefully. Then I whispered, "I carried their name like a burden. Now I carry mine like a banner." Tuesday morning in Austin arrived with sharp sunlight and a cool breeze that didn't ask permission to sweep through the courthouse steps. I stood in line at the clerk's office, envelope in hand, suit freshly pressed. The same office where people filed divorces, traffic disputes, and small claims. But I wasn't small today. Not anymore. "Name?" the clerk asked. "Rowan Dreyer," I said once, for the last time. The woman took my documents, scanned them with a flick of practiced fingers, and stamped the final approval. "It's official," she said, handing me the slip. "You're Rowan Gray now." Outside, the sunlight hit different. Not brighter, just clearer. It was like stepping out of a shadow I didn't know had been cast. That night, I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began writing in long, slow strokes. Not for lawyers, not for reporters, just for truth. The envelope read, "Malric and Alba Dreyer, final notice." Inside, "You cut me out of your will. I wrote my own. You erased my name. I built one worth remembering. You chose silence. I chose legacy. I didn't sign it. Some things speak louder, unsigned." I scanned it, uploaded it to an anonymous blog post, added one caption. "Sometimes the people who break you birth the best parts of you." It spread fast, faster than any courtroom transcript or property dispute headline. Messages poured in, comments from strangers across the country. "You didn't just win, you rewrote the bloodline." "This isn't revenge, this is reclamation." By Thursday, 3 news outlets picked it up. The narrative shifted from scandal to restoration, from victim to visionary, and then we broke ground. East Austin, Lot 14B. I stood with Anselm and Clara as the sign went up, the Gray Center for Family Advocacy. A place for the forgotten, the displaced, the disinherited, to find power again. Just inside the entrance, a brass plaque glinted in the morning sun, in honor of those who reclaimed the meaning of family, founded by Rowan Gray. Later that evening, I returned home, sat at my desk. The original letter lay folded beside me. I didn't reread it. I didn't need to. I placed it into a small wooden box, sealed it shut, and drove toward Lady Bird Lake. The bridge was quiet. Late evening joggers passed by without a glance. I leaned over the edge, felt the wind against my jaw. Then I dropped the box, watched it disappear beneath the surface without a splash. "They gave me nothing," I whispered. "I gave them a reason to remember me." There's something strange about the moment you realize you no longer need an apology to move on. For years, I thought justice meant getting back what was taken. My name, my place, my father's hand on my shoulder. But the real justice came when I stopped waiting for them to look back and started walking forward. If you've ever been made to feel like a guest in your own family, if your value was measured only when it served someone else, know this: legacy isn't something you're given. It's something you build, brick by brick, truth by truth. And now I want to ask you, what name would you reclaim if no one else got to define it? What story would you write if no one ever called you enough? Let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And if this story touched something in you, drop a 1 below. And hey, if you didn't like it, I'd love to hear why. Honest voices make us stronger. If this story meant something to you, even just a little, hit subscribe. We've got more stories coming. Stories about family, betrayal, healing, and finding your voice again. Because sometimes it's not the bloodline that makes you who you are. It's the line you finally draw.